In the dead of night, along the darkened streets of 19th century London, a strange and fearsome presence was said to roam. Local whispers spoke of a ghostly figure, draped in white, haunting the shadows of Hammersmith. It wasn't just a tale told to keep children in line. This ghost was more than a legend. It would go on to terrify locals, spark a deadly confrontation, and ignite a legal case that would echo through England's courts. This is the true story of the Hammersmith ghost, an apparition that blurred the line between superstition and law, and fear and consequence. And it is extremely strange. In the early 19th century, the Hammersmith district of London became the epicenter of ghostly rumors and sightings. Hammersmith, now part of West London, was a small, somewhat isolated village in the early 1800s. With the Thames running through it and a mix of rural and industrial landscapes, it was typical of many such communities around London. Belief in ghosts and supernatural phenomena was common in early 19th century England. Tales of specters and hauntings were part of the cultural fabric, and Hammersmith was no exception. Ghost stories often circulated, particularly in rural areas where folklore was rich and varied. The Hammersmith ghost sightings began in November 1803. Local residents reported seeing a spectral figure dressed in white, said to be the ghost of a suicide victim who had been buried in Hammersmith churchyard. According to folklore, suicides were often denied a Christian burial in consecrated ground, leading to the belief that their spirits would not rest and would haunt the living. One of the earliest and most notable sightings was reported by a pregnant woman who claimed that the ghost attacked her while she was walking near the churchyard. She described the figure as having eyes that glowed like coals of fire, and said it tried to grab her, causing her to faint from fright. Tragically, the fright was said to have caused the woman to go into premature labor, and it was later reported that she never fully recovered from the trauma. The incident was widely discussed in the community and added to the sense of fear and urgency surrounding the ghost sightings. It further solidified the belief that the ghost was not just an eerie presence, but also a malevolent force, capable of causing real harm to the living. Throughout December 1803 and into January 1804, reports of the ghost escalated. Witnesses described him as tall, clad in a white shroud or sheet, and often terrifying those who encountered it. Some even claimed physical assaults, with the ghost allegedly knocking people to the ground or causing fainting spells. One man, a brewer's servant, described how the ghost seized him by the throat and left him struggling to breathe. Another man, a local wagon driver, claimed that the ghost jumped onto his horse, causing the animal to panic and bolt, nearly leading to a serious accident. As the ghost story circulated, the number of sightings began to increase. People reported seeing the ghost near the churchyard, along dark lanes, and even outside their homes. The ghost was said to appear suddenly, often frightening those who encountered it to the point of collapse or shock. One significant encounter came from William Girdler, a night watchman, who reported an encounter with the ghost. His description matched others, contributing to the mounting fear and hysteria. Girdler's encounter with the Hammersmith ghost occurred on one of his regular patrols. As a night watchman, his duties involved keeping the peace and ensuring the safety of the local residents during the nighttime hours. This was during the winter months of 1803, a period when the ghost sightings had intensified and the community was on edge. Girdler reported seeing a figure dressed in white during one of his patrols. According to his account, the figure appeared suddenly and moved quickly, which frightened him. The apparition was described as being tall, human-like in shape, and entirely dressed in white, fitting the descriptions provided by other witnesses. In the dark, foggy conditions typical of London at the time, the figure would have appeared particularly eerie and ghostly. After encountering the spectral figure, Girdler raised the alarm. He immediately reported what he had seen, which added to the growing hysteria in Hammersmith. His status as a night watchman gave credibility to his report, and his experience was widely discussed among the local residents. The ghost sightings had a profound impact on the community. Fear gripped Hammersmith, with people avoiding the streets at night and taking precautions to protect themselves. Some armed themselves, while others formed groups to patrol the area. Girdler's report also played a part in the formation of vigilante groups within the community. Local men, already on edge due to the ghost stories, began to organize patrols to try and capture or confront the ghost. Girdler himself participated in these patrols, reflecting the level of fear and determination among the community members. On January 3, 1804, the most dramatic incident occurred. Francis Smith, a member of one of the vigilante groups, shot and killed Thomas Millwood, whom he mistook for the ghost. Millwood was a bricklayer by profession, living in the Hammersmith area. On the evening of January 3rd, Millwood was returning home from a visit to his parents and was wearing his usual work attire: white trousers, a white flannel waistcoat, and a white apron. This clothing was typical for his trade, but would prove to be fatally misleading in the context of the ongoing ghost panic. Smith, the local excise officer, was among the many Hammersmith residents who had grown increasingly alarmed by reports of the ghost and decided to take action. Armed with a shotgun, he was determined to protect the neighborhood from what was perceived as a supernatural threat. Believing he was confronting the infamous ghost, Smith called out to Millwood, demanding he stop. When Millwood failed to respond, likely confused or startled by the situation, Smith immediately fired his shotgun, fatally wounding Millwood. His body was taken to the nearby Black Lion pub, where a coroner's inquest was held. The inquest jury returned a verdict of willful murder against Francis Smith, leading to his arrest. Smith was put on trial at the Old Bailey on January 13, 1804. His defense argued that he had genuinely believed he was shooting at a ghost, not a human being, and that he had acted out of fear and a sense of duty to protect the community. The defense also highlighted the widespread panic and the belief in the ghost that had gripped the area, suggesting that Smith's actions were understandable given the circumstances. However, the prosecution argued that Smith had acted recklessly and without proper caution, leading to the death of an innocent man. The court had to consider whether Smith's mistaken belief could justify the use of lethal force. The trial of Francis Smith is significant in legal history, as it addressed the issue of culpability when acting under a mistaken belief. It raised questions about self-defense and reasonable actions under perceived threats, influencing future legal standards. The jury found Smith guilty of murder, but they recommended mercy. The judge, Sir John Scott, sentenced him to death, as was the standard punishment for murder at the time. However, recognizing the unusual circumstances, the sentence was quickly commuted to a year of hard labor. This decision reflected the court's recognition of the complex nature of the case balancing the need for justice with an understanding of the fear and confusion that had led to the tragic incident. The case is often cited in legal discussions about mistake of fact defenses, where a defendant argues that they acted under a mistaken belief that led to unintended consequences. The Hammersmith ghost case helped to clarify the limits of such defenses in English law. The Hammersmith ghost phenomenon can be analyzed through the lens of mass hysteria and psychological suggestion. The fear of ghosts, combined with dark, foggy nights and heightened tensions, likely contributed to the proliferation of sightings and reports. One theory was that the ghost was actually a local man named John Graham, who had dressed up in a white sheet to scare his apprentice as punishment for scaring Graham's children with ghost stories. This explanation was considered plausible, as it provided a more logical reason for the sightings and the panic that ensued. Newspapers and pamphlets of the time played a role in spreading the story, adding to the public's fascination and fear. The media coverage helped cement the Hammersmith ghost in popular culture. And so the tale of the Hammersmith ghost leaves us with questions that echo through the ages. Was it truly an otherworldly spirit tormenting the people of London, or simply a frightened community driven to extremes by fear? The ghost may have vanished, but the story lingers, a reminder of the fine line between belief and reality, superstition and law. So as we leave the fog-laden streets of Hammersmith, we're left to wonder, how far would we go when faced with the unknown? So keep your eyes open and your wits about you, because you never know what might be lurking in the shadows.